All right, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to dry out the bird. So these birds, now 90% or something like that of the duck sold in the US comes from Maple Tree Farms up in northern Indiana. So they usually come around this time of year. Uh, we got ours at our local Meijer and Aldi. So Aldi brand even says, it has the Aldi brand on there. But if you look closely, you'll see a maple leaf, and it is just Maple Leaf Farms. But I need to really dry this out because these birds were wet chilled birds. So uh, after they're slaughtered, after the birds are killed, they are rapidly cooled in order to make sure that they stay, um, you know, limit the amount of potential bacteria that could be forming. Um, the traditional way would be, stick it in the blast chiller where it can cool down quickly. But many farms, including Maple Leaf, do what's called a wet brine, and that's where once they kill the bird and after they take the feathers off, what they will do is they will dunk it in a cold saline water solution to make sure that it, you know, cools down quickly and also gives it a little bit of a mini brine, so to speak. That's why when you read it, it'll say something like, 7 or 10 or something percent juice is retained. That's the reason. So the first thing for me is I'm going to dry it out. I'm going to dry it out again a little bit. Notice that the cutting board here is pretty wet. Duck is not as prone to bacteria as chicken is, but it's still a bird and subject to bird and it's raw meat. So still make sure that you take precautions with dealing with it. I'm going to make sure that to wash everything afterwards. And because, last thing we want is food poisoning, especially when it comes to Thanksgiving Day. So I want to make sure everything is nice and clean, and in this case, dry. And the reason we want to dry it off as much as we can is two reasons. One, um, we're dry aging the bird, not wet aging it. So I don't even think wet aging is a thing. That's kind of terrifying, actually, when I think about it. Wet aging a bird, sitting it in a liquid solution for a long time. Let's just not go there. But secondly, is that just in general, if you're going to prep a bird for roasting, I recommend drying it out a bit because the drying it out is going to help with the crisping of the skin. Now, real quick, before I get to cutting, I want to mention something very quickly about duck. And I don't know if you can see it here, but one of the things about duck is they have a lot more fat on their breast than chickens do, and even than turkeys do. And so it is very important that when you're cooking duck, that you render out as much of that fat as you can. Otherwise, what you're left with is kind of unrendered duck fat that's kind of chewy and gross and not great. So there are some things, and I'll talk about pan roasting duck and other ways to roast duck to make it. But in general, just make sure that you cook this long enough so you don't necessarily want as high a heat as you can on that breast. You want maybe a little more moderate heat in order to make sure that that fat fully renders. So now I got it somewhat dried out. I am going to very quickly take off the legs and a little bit and the backbone right near the hips, so to speak. I also don't need the skin around the neck so much. In fact, we need to expose the neck because that's where we're going to hang the birds in a very, what my wife would call marionette grotesque. So it does look kind of creepy, but the advantage of it, of course, is the fact that we have as much airflow as possible around there. So I just took the fat off the top here, and now I'm going to remove the legs, but I'm going to remove the legs as much as I can with their skin intact. So I'm going to find that joint there right between the skin, and I'm just going to take my very sharp knife, which if you're not using a sharp knife, we're going to have a talk. Use your sharp knife to cut in here. And now we have the hip bone is somewhat free of the main area. Now I'm going to do the same on this side here. And I just want to keep under the rib cage because we want that rib cage is going to stay with the rest of the dry aging. And you can see that the hip has come away here. So now that I have the hips away, I'm going to find approximately where I want to take it off. So I'm going to cut the skin here real quick, and I'm just going to do right here. And once I get the other side, now that the skin is fully away, what I can do is find a natural break point just by bending it backwards. And by bending it backwards like that, I just find where did the spine or vertebrae separate, so that now I have one duck bottom and I have one duck top. I'm going to expose this, and then we'll get to twining it up so that we can hang it. And as you can see, it's going to be kind of creepy. But as I did this once before for Christmas a couple years ago. My wife said it was the best diet plan for preparation for Christmas, because every time she opened the door, she was like, "Nope, I don't want to eat anymore." So there you go. This is your new diet plan. Remember it. Just dry age some birds in your main fridge. Make sure that you keep it clean, but dry aging the birds there, you probably won't want to snack very quickly there. So what I'm doing here is you may be able to see there's a little bit of the rib cage here. I'm just trying to slice on the back end of that because we don't need this for the next portion, which is our leg quarters. The leg quarter just means the hip, the thigh, and the leg. So I'm just going to slice around the back here along where the joint is. And now I need to find the joint. So I've got a joint here. I can feel it. I'm just going to bend it backwards again, pop that joint out, and then I just cut the ligaments. It's really awkward cutting for the camera like this, but I'll get used to it, I'm sure. Now I have one good leg quarter. And so I'm going to do a separate video on how I'm going to prepare these so you can see what I'm going to do. But basically, I'm going to let them dry out overnight, and I'm going to salt them, but I'm going to salt them with a special marinade that I will talk about as well. Lots of videos coming. So that special marinade, just for those who know, is called koji, shio koji. And if you want to look that up, that is a really cool substance that's actually a mold, but it's the mold that's used to make soy sauce. It's just used to make some kinds of sake wine. It's used in all sorts of preparations. It's one of the most famous molds out there that is used for the production of food. So it turns out some enterprising people recently found their way to making or testing it out on other foods, and they found that it actually works as a wonderful tenderizer for meat, and it adds a lot of flavor. And you can even actually speed up the process of charcuterie making, sausages and stuff, by using shio koji. And so here's my second leg quarter. See, there's a lot of extra skin. You may even be able to see there's a lot of extra fat on that skin. So we're going to render all that out, and we're going to be set. And then what I'm left with is this little bit of a tailbone. So what I'm going to do with this little tailbone is I'm going to roast this tailbone. I'm going to roast it till it's well beyond edible, and I'm going to use it to make a stock that I'm going to then reduce into what the French call a demi-glace, or basically a really thick, syrupy stock that is flavor packed. And I'm going to use it's going to be super flavorful. I'm going to spike it with some cherry concentrate. But there you have it. We have 2 duck quarters. We have 1 duck backbone, and we have one duck crown. There we go. And so here's our duck crown that we will be hanging up. So to hang it, I am essentially just going to take some kitchen twine here and beg forgiveness for making these full of duck juice. And I'm just going to expose this here and wrap it around one of the vertebrae so that it doesn't want to slip out. And this is where your knot tying skills come in. So if you're a scout, this will help. I'm just, for those who are scouts or boatsmen, I'm just going to do a couple of half hitches here to make sure that it gets tied. There you go. Now it's hanging up, right? So what I have here is then I am going to do what's known as a bowline hitch. My father would be so proud of me. And now I've got a knot that won't slip. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, so I don't get it all juicy. This is going to go in the fridge, and it's going to hang from up here like so. All right, so I'll come back when we're getting ready to hang it, and I'll show you how it's going to look in the fridge. Okay, so here we are with the finished product. Don't pay attention to how empty the fridge is. My fridge is actually more empty than normal, but you can see that I've got a little tension bar in there hanging up. And the big thing is to make sure that they're not touching anything. So it's probably going to spin for a little bit, at least until it settles down, but you can see it's already starting to drip a little bit, which is why I have a pan underneath with some parchment paper to catch those drippings. So I'm going to check in with you show you guys how it's looking on a day after day. But here's the start of our big duck project for the fall. So I will keep you guys in touch. In the meantime, if you want to try less intimidating first stab at duck, we'll talk about that soon. Anyway, have a great day, everyone.